Hi everyone, Tim the Plane Man here and welcome to Plane Time. So we've hit an exciting point in the build. It's time to put the Sopwith Pup from Dancing Wings. It's time to put all the pieces together. So I have the fuselage assembled with the cowling. I've got sets of wings that we just finished gluing. So I just removed the pieces getting ready to build the wings. These are all of the pieces of the wings. We have the lower wing pieces, the T's, the upper wing pieces, the S's, and the ribs. So the ribs, there are, let's see, let me count them. So 3, 6, and 8. So 14 R ribs. And there are 2 that are Q. There's 2 little things that you need to watch out for with the ribs, just to make sure you get it right. The first one is these special Q ribs, and it doesn't really show up clearly in the instructions. Once you figure it out, then you look at the instructions and you can think, oh yeah, that's what they mean. So the Q ribs go on the upper wings, and they're basically going to fit the very first rib at the top. Right, they're going to go right there, the part that goes at the very middle. Right, I won't slot them in right now because I want to slot them in carefully for you. The Q rib goes one there, and then there'll be R ribs, 4 of them, that run across underneath the bottom of the top wing. And the same thing with the right hand wing. There'll be a Q rib in the middle. Oops, I had a frame there. A Q rib in the middle, and then there will be R ribs, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that go along here. The reason why this is a little confusing, and I want to make sure you get it, you understand, is that the bottom wings have an interesting little set of slots here that look like they're for ribs, but they're not. So on the bottom wings, you actually put 3 only R's. 1, 2, 3. These 2 slots are going to be used for building the frame that holds up the top wing, and they will join up there. So that's the trick. There's 2 Q's, and there are 14 R's, 3 R's on each top wing, and 4 R's on each bottom wing. Each bottom wing actually ends up with 5 ribs because it'll have a Q and then 4 R's. I just want to show you a little bit of the work in progress on putting the wings together. It's actually fairly straightforward, not really that complicated, but the first part is just making sure that the wing fits closely to the ribs or the spars on the wings. I'm using these pegs to make sure that they stay in place until it's dry. And the second part is just in terms of dealing with the upper wings here is gluing on the Q pieces. So the 2 Q ribs, which are different to all of the R's, which I've gathered over here. And I'm just going to glue that in while you're watching. I'll show you on doing it. Honestly, it's fairly straightforward, but if you know, I'm just going to show you one for anyone who's interested in seeing how I do it, and all the others are the same. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's really, you know, I've dry fitted this. The little tags in the ribs fit quite cleanly into the slots in the wings. I haven't had to worry about cleaning anything. And so effectively what I'm doing, well, 2 things. One is that both of these wings, I've laid them out on the sheet of paper how they're going to be on the plane side by side. One of the little things that you want to watch out for is make sure you don't build 2 left-hand wings. It'd be very easy to do it because the wing shapes are exactly the same. You could build 2 wings, put a whole bunch of ribs on each side, and end up with 2 wings that are the same way up. That would be kind of unfortunate. So make sure not to do that, really. So we line these up, the outer part of the wings facing outwards, make sure that the wings match, and then make sure what you do on the underside is the same or kind of the opposite on both wings, so that you end up like I have here, 2 matching sets of wings. So then it's actually fairly straightforward. Again, I'm using the standard white wood glue. Bought it from a hardware store. You can, if you choose, maybe use super glue, but I prefer this because it's easier to work with and more forgiving of mistakes, and when you don't tend to glue your fingers to things, which I find troublesome. So all I'm going to do is basically glue, little glue in each one of the slots there. Use a little bit of spare balsa to clear off a bit of excess, a bit too much come out of that glue bottle there. Just clear off the excess. I should have been more careful putting it in. And then what we're going to do is get the rib and try to dribble just a small amount, not an awful lot required. Even that's slightly too much. Just along the top of the rib where it's going to glue to the plane. Am I doing that in frame? I think I am. Okay. And just a dribble along there and on the bottom part there. In fact, it's sort of most important that the two end pieces are where the glue holds to the wing. Sort of somewhat more important than getting it on the spar here. The other thing is just to be careful that where the angle of the rib is more rounded is going to be the front of the wing. The front of the wing is the part where the curve is more pointed. And again, having laid out the wings in place, make sure that I get these in the right place. So just slot the two slots into the holes in the wing, and then peg them in place so that we end up with that nice curve around the rib. And then as a little bit of glue has pushed out from the edge there, just an idea just to, again, use just a spare piece of balsa, just clean up a little bit of excess glue there. If you're more controlled than I, you may have to put a finer spread of glue on there, but in the end this will dry clear, so it won't be a problem. And there you go. So I'm just going to do the same thing with both of these wings, and I'll be back. I've got tail feathers all good to go, and before we turn the camera down and start doing the work, I wanted to talk a little bit about the assembly order and the instructions. So this is a situation where I sort of give you some advice about these instructions. Don't just blindly follow them in the order that they're printed. We've done a couple of things on the way through. I think I've pointed out to certain things to sort of, be careful about what happens in the instructions. Think a little bit about it, but here's a very, very important point. And the instructions themselves, they sort of give you hints about this. So one of the things is that in the wheels and the undercarriage section, which is section 4 in the instructions, so that's this little piece here. So we say, it says build the wheels, assemble the frame, and then it shows assembling the frame onto the fuselage. So if you follow the assembly of the wheels in the order that they're printed, then you're putting the undercarriage onto the fuselage before you've actually assembled the wings onto the plane. But the picture shows assembling the undercarriage onto the fuselage, if you look carefully at it, after the wings are on the plane. And that's what you need to do, and the reason really is not so much about getting the build right, it's about making it easy for yourself to do things and not to break things. Because assembling the fuselage, assembling the undercarriage onto the fuselage and then trying to do the fiddly work of putting the wings on, you're actually going to risk that you break the undercarriage while you're doing the other work. What you really want to do is skip that step, that one picture that shows assembling the undercarriage and putting it onto the fuselage, and wait until you get to a point, probably I'd suggest after completely putting everything else onto the plane, then put the undercarriage on afterwards. Pardon me. So the same thing applies to some of the other steps that you see here in the next step, step 5. Assemble the upper and lower wing. So this part up here, and we're just going to talk through it a little bit. The first thing it shows is actually assembling the wings, and that's fine, and we do that in the order that it's shown. The second step is to build the frame that's actually going to hold the upper wing onto the plane, and that part is fine. But then what we want to do is put the lower wings on and then assemble, well, actually now I look at it, it really is that undercarriage piece that's out of step. So assemble the lower wings, put the lower wings on, then assemble the upper wings, and then finally, and this is another part about out of order, is because we built out the tail feathers far earlier, but it's really just now that it actually makes sense to put them on, and putting the elevator and the rudder onto the plane at the end, because they're really fine things, basically get the wings on first. So it's basically going to be wings, tail feathers, and then finally undercarriage onto the plane. And I'll make some notes as we go through about this, but you know, one of the things that we have here, for example, a little bit out of order, just in terms of making it easy to do, was because I was doing painting. And you may not necessarily want to do painting, but because I wanted to paint everything together, and I painted the rudder, and then I assembled on the control horn onto the rudder. Same thing with the elevator flaps, assembled that, put it together, and then put the control horn on. I really think now, as I mentioned, thinking ahead, that it probably would have been better if I had have completely assembled the rudder actually before doing the painting. So sometimes you want to adjust the build order according to what makes sense for your build. So having said all of that, now let's move forward. I'm going to turn the camera down, and we're going to start working on pulling the frame together for the wings, and then assembling the wings onto the plane.